and welcome back to the Rabbit Hole Podcast. I'm your host, Faith Julius, and we're back to deep dive into some of the strangest, wildest, and craziest conspiracy theories out there. Today, we're going to go ahead and do a part 2 to the JFK files, and this is all about the evidence that they tried to hide from us. In part 1, if you haven't seen it, it is up on our channel. You can go ahead and watch it on YouTube or Spotify, and we explored some of the major theories behind the assassination of President Kennedy. From the CIA betrayal to Cuban operations to one of the most controversial ideas that JFK was silenced because he was getting too close to the truth around Area 51 and aliens. Today, in part 2, we're going to be unpacking the evidence behind these. The files, the witnesses, and the conflicting stories that suggest Kennedy's death wasn't just an act of one man, but rather the result of a web of secrecy stretching from Dallas to Langley to the Nevada desert. Why we're doing this? The reason is when you put all of the pieces together, the CIA, the mob, the Cold War, the UFO connection, the picture that forms isn't just one of chaos, but it's one of very clear and manipulated control. So let's go ahead and get started on what we do have on paper. Thousands of pages from the CIA and FBI documents have been declassified since 2017. Some mundane and some are redacted, but there still is a few interesting things within them. One memo dated November 12th, 1963, just 10 days before the assassination, alleged that Kennedy had requested, end quote, a full review of all UFO intelligence and ordering the CIA to coordinate with NASA and the Soviets under this. I will go ahead and put this up here, but this is now known as the JFK UFO Memo. Officially, it's never been authenticated on whether it's real or not, but according to Stanton Friedman, who is a UFO researcher, its formatting and classification tags match those of the 1960 government documentation style. If it is real, it proves that Kennedy was poking a bear that was very deeply classified, and that alone could have made him a target to the CIA. While there are a few inconsistencies with the document, some of those include the fonts, the signature inconsistencies, and then headers and classification tags. It also is seen to have incorrect markings for the time, and some of the documentation is riddled with so many flaws that, as well as inconsistencies, that it would be unlikely to be a genuine intelligence report. While Friedman continued to defend the authenticity of this document, arguing a cosmic Watergate cover-up, others found evidence against the document compelling. Linda Motal and Friedman believed that documents were real, but many others, like Bill Moore, were still suspicious of the documentation from the beginning, as well as Brian Dunning, who later concluded that the documents were likely fabricated. Now, there's two ideas as to why we think that these documents were released. One is a deliberate hoax. It is suggested that members of the UFO community possibly wanted to release these for financial gain or to create a compelling narrative that they wanted to push. But there's also the idea that is floating around of government disinformation. It's an alternative theory that basically says that the documents were formed by the government in order to provide disinformation. By leaking these flawed and easily debunked files, the government could discredit UFO research and obscure the actual nature of legitimacy behind some of these projects that may or may not be happening. This theory was suggested again by Bill Moore and Brian Dunning. But let's go ahead and take a step back. Before the whole UFO idea, there was the idea of enemies inside of the state itself. After the Bay of Pigs invasion failed, which I talked about in our last episode, in 1961, Kennedy fired the CIA director Allen Dulles, blaming the agency for misleading him. He reportedly stated that he wanted to splinter the CIA into thousands of pieces and scatter it to the winds. This was more than just tension, this was war starting. Many believe that this made Kennedy public enemy number one for the intelligence agency. When a president questions the existence of an agency, some think that the agency questioned his survival at the end of the day. Documents show that CIA officers were monitoring Lee Harvey Oswald for months before Dallas, even filming reports about his movements in Mexico City. So how does this man be on their radar and still end up killing the president? If you look at the 2025 documents, there are a few that I read through. I did not read through all of them, but there were a few that I read through that got declassified in March of 2025 in support of the president's executive order 14176. And there is the mention of Harvey's name in a lot of those and his understanding of how close he was with the Soviet Union. But here's where things get messy with the CIA. There's this thing so-called the Deep State Triangle, and it's 3 agencies that all allegedly had issues with Kennedy and were capable of violence because of their anger against him. Those include the CIA, who were furious with Kennedy over covert operations, the Mafia, which were angry at Robert Kennedy and his shutdown within the Justice Department, making the Mafia lose millions of dollars, and then Cuban exiles who felt as though they were betrayed after the Bay of Pigs invasion failed. Declassified memos confirm that the CIA did work with mobsters like Sam Giancia and Johnny Rosilla on assassination attempts against Fidel Castro. I apologize if I butchered those names. They collaborated once with them, so what's to say that they couldn't collaborate with them again? Some research argue against the same network of covert agents, hitmen, and organized crime simply directed its target from Havana to Dallas. It is confirmed that the CIA worked with those 2 individuals in the early 60s. Their partnership and other assassination plots against Fidel Castro were exposed during the 1975 hearings by the Church Committee, a Senate committee investigating abuse by U.S. intelligence agencies after the war. The CIA had presidential orders to remove Castro, and organized crime leaders like those 2 were eager to gain control of their lucrative casinos in Havana, which Castro had shut down after seizing power in 1959. The CIA used private investigator Robert Manhu. While they had all these plans, there were several failed attempts. Several plans were hacked to get poison to Castro via underworld contacts inside of Cuba, but they all ended up failing. Now, let's re-enter this idea of Area 51. One theory claims that the CIA didn't kill JFK for revenge, but rather for protection against secrecy. Not to protect themselves, but to protect this secret that was bigger than any other operation within the Cold War. The Magic's 12 group, which I also talked about in part 1, allegedly formed by President Truman after 1947 Roswell incident, was said to oversee all extraterrestrial recovery programs, and according to leaked MJ-12 files, Kennedy demanded access for their data, which is also seen within the memo. Another CIA memo, sometimes called Project Eyes Only, reportedly states Lancer, which is confirmed to be JFK's Secret Service codename, has made inquiries regarding our activities, and this cannot be allowed. Now, it has been proven that this is almost certainly a fabricated document and is not true by any means. The source claims that the quote came from the burned memo, or the Project Eyes Only memo, which first circulated back in 1999 by an anonymous source claiming that they were a former CIA operative. Experts have never been able to verify the burned memo as authentic, and it has diminished as a part of a fringe media and source of conspiracy theories. This is used as the supposed evidence that the CIA considered killing Kennedy to stop his inquiries from the UFO intelligence. While Lancer was his true code name for the Secret Service, the Project Eyes Only, real CIA documents do restrict to eyes only, but it's a security caveat rather than a specific name that would be put on a project. Another powerful theory focuses on the money and the power in this situation. By 1963, Kennedy had ordered U.S. troops to begin withdrawing from Vietnam. This going against what the Pentagon wanted and defense coordinators who are gearing up and ready for this war to happen. Then came his push for nuclear disarmament and peace talks with Khrushchev's. Critics say that JFK was threatening the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower had warned about previously, and the intelligence-military alliance needed him gone to keep the war machine turning. This is another explanation as to how the CIA and other operations are connected to his assassination. Now, the question that I continue to ask myself is, why do so many people keep saying that they saw things or they know things or that they were witnesses to this if it was just a simple one-man murder? Dorothy Kilgallion was a journalist who claimed that she was going to blow the case up but mysteriously died in 1969. The medical examiner for the city claimed that her death was accidental, a mix of booze and barbiturates, and she ended up dying on November 8th, 1965, almost a little less than a year from when Kennedy had died. Jack Ruby, who shot Oswald on live TV, said before his death, "It all goes higher than you think." And CIA agent E. Howard Hunt, in his final years, allegedly confessed to his son that in the, quote, big event, naming ex-CIA officers and anti-Castro operations. This was all in January of 2007, and he was a master spy and convicted Watergate conspirator, confessed to being involved in the assassination and named several other people, some of which include Frank Stragus, an anti-Castro paramilitary closely associated with Hunt. Stragus was one of the Watergate burglars, as well as David Morales, chief of operations at the CIA, JM Wave Station in Miami. Morales himself told a few close associates of his involvement as well. David Phillips, CIA propaganda specialist and later chief of Western Hemisphere Division. Phillips was assigned to Mexico City during the mysterious trip of Lee Harvey Oswald, or someone using his name, to the city in the fall of 1963. Antonio Vicana, Cuban exile leader of Alpha 66. Vicana told the HSCA that a Manuris bishop, thought by many to be Philip, pointed out Lee Harvey Oswald to him, as well as William Harvey, a CIA officer who ran the ZR rifle executive program. Harvey fell out of favor with Kennedy when he sent sabotage teams into Cuba during the 1962 missile crisis. Cord Meir, a high-level CIA officer whose ex-wife, Mary Meir, was having an affair with JFK. French gunman Gracie Knoll. Hunt's chart indicated an unnamed French hitman on the infamous Gracie Knoll. With all of this, even Marilyn Monroe was rumored to have a CIA file that was suggested that she planned a press conference about a secret air base for alien craft, aka Area 51, after conversations with JFK and RFK. Too many people with too much to say, silenced way too soon. After doing a little bit of further research, the claim about Marilyn Monroe's alleged CIA files and her plan to hold a press conference around Area 51 is not a verified fact. While she was a prominent figure, there was no evidence to this specific story, which circulates online and within various conspiracies about this. The UFO phenomenon and public fascination is where at their peak in 1950s, leading to many stories, some of which being misidentified as hoax. There is no credible evidence to support the claim that her supposed CIA file contained this information, but it also begs to differ about the fact that we still have documents that are not released, and why are they not being released? As I said earlier, in 2025, new declassified JFK documents have dropped, and it was thousands of pages. I did not read through all of them, but I definitely read through some of them. The National Archive confirmed thousands of CIA and NSA pages still remain sealed, citing national security. So here we are, 6 decades later, and the same agency who's accused of involvement is still deciding who and what we're allowed to see. Maybe the truth still is missing, like I said with Marilyn Monroe, but maybe it's just being managed, it's not missing. Whether you believe the CIA acted alone, working with the Mafia, or silenced a president to hide alien tech, all of these theories share one common theme: control through secrecy. A president who wanted transparency, an agency, the CIA, who thrives in the dark, and a death that changed history. If you look at the decades that followed, Vietnam, Watergate, Iran and Contra, the pattern of power without accountability only deepens. Maybe JFK wasn't just killed. Maybe he was a warning to others to not mess with the CIA. But honestly, who really knows what happened? Who really knows what's going on? Unless we have those documents and we have the evidence, we will never know. We know that Kennedy challenged the CIA, the Pentagon, and the Federal Reserve, and we also know that he asked about UFO intelligence, whether you believe that document to be true or not. And we know he died before any of his demands could be fulfilled by these agencies. Is this just a coincidence, or is this consequence? Thank you so much for listening to the Rabbit Hole podcast on this part 2 episode of the JFK files and the evidence they tried to hide. Next time, we are going to be talking about 9/11. Is it an inside job, or was it really a terrorist attack? Again, keeping on this idea that the government is hiding stuff from us. Don't forget, if you liked this episode, to go ahead and leave a comment down below of something you would like to hear us talk about or something you found interesting, and to like and follow us on Spotify and YouTube, depending on where you like to stream your podcasts at. We also have TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and you can go ahead and find those links down below, and make sure that you follow to keep up with us every week on Wednesday. I look forward to diving down the rabbit hole again with you all next week.